Tonight, sea change. The longest-serving prime minister in Israeli history is on the outs after a knife's-edge vote to install a new coalition government.
I'm ready to take that responsibility.
Also overseas, President Biden meeting with NATO members for the first time. Central to those discussions, China and Russia.
NATO has declared cyberspace an area of combat. That means they are planning something.
Cybersecurity at the forefront ahead of the president's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And Old Glory gets her due.
God bless America.
The U.S. commemorates the Stars and Stripes on Flag Day.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. And into an era in Israel. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Eric Phillips. Tonight, a razor-thin margin is all it took to bring Israel's longest-serving prime minister's tenure to an end.
And now a coalition of 8 parties cobbled together to put an end to Benjamin Netanyahu's 12-year leadership must learn how to govern, even as Netanyahu vows to return.
And if it is destined for us to be in the opposition, we will do it with our backs straight until we topple this dangerous government and return to lead the country in our way.
Today, the new government posed for the traditional picture with Israeli President Reuven Rivlin on Sunday night by the slimmest of margins, 60 to 59. The Knesset approved the new coalition government. Incoming Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, once Netanyahu's ally and now rival, recognized his former boss.
Thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu, for many years of service and lots of achievements for Israel. As Prime Minister, you worked for many years with devotion and to our political and defensive power.
Joining us now from our Jerusalem bureau is our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. Chris, thanks so much for being with us here today. Now,
great to be with you.
This is the new government that has been sworn in over the weekend. What's now coming up? What's next?
Well, they're taking power. I mean, all these ministers, there's about 28 ministers. They're beginning to take over in their different ministries. Naftali Bennett, the new prime minister, he's met with the staff of the prime minister's office. And this new party, this new coalition, very, very unusual, diverse coalition, probably the most diverse in Israel's history, is beginning to take over in the reins of power. From the defense ministry to the interior ministry to the justice ministry, it's sort of a new era here in Israel right now.
Yeah, even still, Netanyahu, he's vowing to return to power. Chris, we have, of course, seen that he is a political survivor, and this one proved too much. But is it ever good politics, Chris, in Israel to count out Benjamin Netanyahu?
Not at all, Jenna. I think he is probably the most shrewd Israeli politician in memory. He's been for 12 years prime minister. Back in the late 1990s, he was prime minister for 3 years. He's been the force of Israeli politics for probably the last 20 years. So don't count him out. And actually last night in his speech to the Knesset, he said, hey, I will be back. And he means that. He is now the leader of the opposition, and he's going to make a robust attempt. And as he said, to really come against this, what he calls a dangerous government, and try to get it out of power. In fact, when he met with Naftali Bennett today for just about 30 minutes, that's exactly what he told Naftali Bennett. He says, we're going to try to take you out of power and eliminate this new coalition.
I will be back. He's saying it not just figuratively, but literally. Well, how will this new coalition govern, Chris?
Well, it's going to be very hard, Eric, because it's so diverse. It goes all the way from the far left of the political spectrum and actually to the far right. If you look at Naftali Bennett, he's actually very conservative, probably more to the right than actually Benjamin Netanyahu. Someone's described this new coalition government as like a car with 4 wheels going in different directions. So how they govern and how they can be a cohesive coalition government remains to be seen. Some people think that there'll be new elections here in Israel before the U.S. has their midterms in 2022. So they differ on so many things. The only thing that really brought them together, Eric, was the fact that they really wanted to oust Prime Minister Netanyahu. That was the glue that held him together. Whether it's the glue can keep them together remains to be seen.
Especially in light of the recent fighting in the region, is there any reason, Chris, to hope that this new coalition can maybe bring about a comprehensive peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians?
I don't think that's really going to happen right now, Jenna. For one reason, I think the Palestinian Authority and Hamas right now, both in the West Bank and in Gaza, they're competing for the allegiance of the Palestinian people. And the way they're competing for that allegiance is trying to prove to the Palestinians on the street who is the one that is going to fight Israel the hardest. Hamas did that for 11 days with more than 4,000 rockets. The Palestinian Authority is doing the same as much as they can, trying to foment violence and riots here within Israel. So I don't see right now in the near future any prospect of negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, and I don't see, a two-state solution coming anytime soon or peace with the Palestinian Authority right now.
All right, CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell in Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Chris. It's great to see you.
Always great to have you.
Great to be with you.
Meanwhile, President Biden is in Brussels this week, his first foreign trip, and one with incredibly high stakes.
Indeed, he's working to repair relationships with NATO allies, but his most important task will be to confront two leaders who have been working against the United States, Turkish President Recep Erdogan and Russian leader Vladimir Putin. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke has the story.
President Joe Biden wants NATO leaders to know America is back. This after years of America first under former President Donald Trump.
NATO is critically important for U.S. interest in and of itself.
The biggest item on today's agenda, a meeting with Turkish President Recep Erdogan. Relations with Turkey remain strained. One of the biggest challenges, a major weapons purchase from Russia. Still, Erdogan is hoping to smooth things over, offering to keep forces in Afghanistan following the U.S. withdrawal to guard and operate Kabul airport. While Biden took a more amicable approach with Erdogan, things could be more tense midweek with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That I'm not looking for conflict with Russia, but that we will respond if Russia continues its harmful activities. And we will not fail to defend the transatlantic alliance or stand up for democratic values.
Biden has called Russia the biggest threat to America's security, and he's hoping to rally other NATO allies to confront both Russia and China. In Wednesday's meeting, Biden is expected to specifically address the recent surge in cyber attacks on American targets. Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institute says while he expects Putin to deny, some of what Russia does in the cyber realm is considered fair play.
We have to distinguish between espionage, which is the way great powers treat each other and a reality of life in international politics, versus confiscation of commercial secrets, versus trying to bring down infrastructure, letting hackers on one's territory bring down infrastructure or do ransomware attacks.
In an interview with NBC News, Putin says he wants to work with the U.S. to fight cybercrime.
The simplest thing to do would be for us to sit down calmly and agree on joint work in cyberspace. We are willing to engage with international participants, including the United States. You are the ones who have refused to engage in joint work.
During that same interview, Putin suggested a prisoner swap of cyber criminals between the U.S. and Russia. Biden called the offer a good sign of progress, but the White House says he was not endorsing the idea. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Caitlin, thanks. Tonight, evacuation orders are underway in the wake of a major chemical plant fire. Fire officials in Illinois are asking anyone within a 1-mile radius to evacuate the area as the massive blaze pours black smoke into the Prairie State skyline. The Chemtool Incorporated facility in Rockton makes fluids, lubricants, and grease products. No word yet on what caused the fire.
On the COVID-19 front, a new vaccine is in the works from Novavax. Today, the Maryland-based company announced that its experimental COVID-19 vaccine is safe and 100% effective. The Phase 3 clinical trial results come ahead of the FDA approval for emergency use and in the wake of a major lawsuit over vaccine mandates in Texas. Sunday, a federal judge in Houston dismissed a lawsuit brought by employees of Houston Methodist Hospital, challenging the hospital proposal for requiring employees to get vaccinated.
And joining us now is Julia Manchester, political reporter for The Hill. And Julia, thank you as always for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us, in light of that lawsuit over a vaccine mandate in Texas being dismissed, do you think there will be repercussions in terms of mandating vaccines in other areas?
You know, it's possible. I think it depends what the political makeup of the area is. Look, there are some parts of the country where there is a lot of skepticism to vaccines and there's a lot of pushback to vaccines. And there's also, particularly among conservatives and Republicans, a belief that the vaccine shouldn't necessarily be pushed on someone, that it's their own personal choice and such. So potentially, however, I think we're entering a new phase of this coronavirus pandemic where you're seeing the Delta variant continue to rise in the UK. We've seen cases obviously reported here in the United States. And I think Americans right now, and what we're seeing, government officials would like to stay on track of where we are. And that's a track of trying to get as many Americans vaccinated as possible. Vice President Kamala Harris is out there essentially urging Americans in South Carolina today to get vaccinated. So I would say in some areas there will be pushback. However, we're seeing that there is a concerted effort by the U.S. government to try to encourage more Americans to get the shot.
Yeah, they're aiming for 70% by the July 4th holiday. We'll see if that happens. Julia, in an op-ed in the Washington Post recently, it suggested former President Trump can flip the Senate with a phone call to Senator Manchin, convincing him to switch parties from Democrat to Republican. What do you think? Is that even a possibility?
I don't know if it's necessarily a possibility. Look, I think Joe Manchin is a very moderate Democrat. That does not mean he's a Republican. He very much stands with Democrats on a number of issues, key issues like gun control, for example. So I think Joe Manchin right now, it's not a question as, you know, whether he's going to become a Republican or not. I think it's a question as to who is essentially going to come out on top in this battle between the moderate Democrats like Manchin and Kristen Sinema or the progressive Democrats in the party like Senator Bernie Sanders. So I think right now Manchin still is very much a Democrat. And we also saw House Speaker Nancy Pelosi out on the Sunday shows yesterday telling CNN that she has been in touch with Joe Manchin and she's not giving up on him.
And Julia, speaking of the moderate Democrats, there's a growing conflict on the Hill between Democrats. Do you think there are many other moderate Democrats like Senators Manchin and Sinema who are remaining silent publicly while Manchin leads the charge?
You know, it's very possible. I think right now, particularly in the Senate, I think Manchin and Sinema are leading the charge. I think for the other Democratic senators, it seems like they are very much falling in line. But I think part of it is because Manchin and Sinema are both in a very unique situation, especially Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is in a red state. He's a senator from a red state. He cannot go progressive, as politically progressive as, for example, Bernie Sanders can in Vermont or Jeff Merkley can in Oregon. He is in a politically red state, so he is going to naturally be more conservative on some of these issues. That goes for Kristen Sinema as well.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Julie, we have to leave it there. We're out of time, but we appreciate you coming on. Julia Manchester with The Hill. Great to see you.
Thank you.
And coming up, a sneak peek ahead of the former vice president's next big stop and how conservatives hope to gain back the majority in Congress.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Former Vice President Mike Pence is set to headline a major conservative policy conference this week. The 48th Vice President, Republican, and 50th Governor of Indiana will help lay the foundation for conservatives working to win back the majority in Congress in the 2022 midterm elections. The Faith and Freedom Coalition kicks off this year's Road to Majority Thursday in Orlando.
And here with us now is Faith and Freedom's chairman, Dr. Ralph Reed. So glad to have you with us. Now, tell us, how significant is it to have former Vice President Pence speaking at this year's conference?
Well, we're excited to have him. We've got an extraordinary lineup of speakers, senators, governors. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is keynoting our gala. We're giving our Lifetime Achievement Award to former Speaker Newt Gingrich. We expect somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 attendees, the biggest Road to Majority ever. It's going to be quite a weekend.
Yeah. We're curious, Ralph, and good to see you this evening. Did you ask former President Donald Trump to speak, or was he invited?
We sure did. Former President Trump has spoken 6 times to Road to Majority, 3 times as a private citizen or candidate, and 3 times as president. We look forward to having him in the future, and he was invited, and he's always welcome.
Well, speaking of President Trump, just want to get your opinion. Who is at the helm of the Republican Party right now? Is President Trump the de facto leader of the GOP?
Well, I think in a healthy and vibrant party that's out of power, which is where the Republican Party is right now, there's no single locus of leadership. Obviously, you've got congressional leadership, you've got governors, you have former President Trump, who still has a very important voice in the future of the party, particularly should he decide to seek the nomination in 2024. So, as with all other things Trump, it's not going to be boring. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready for what promises to be a very fascinating next 3 or 4 years.
Ralph, within the past year, there's been a steady decline in Americans who identify as conservative. How do you hope to win them back, and what might be that strategy?
Well, I think we're very confident and optimistic. And I think the first answer to your question is really simply stated, the abysmal record of the current administration. I mean, they've been in office for a little more than 120 days. You've already had a war in the Middle East, a crisis on the southern border, anemic employment numbers, the highest inflation in 13 years. That's after 4 or 5 months. Imagine what it's going to be like after 4 years. So I think this radical left-wing agenda of tax, spend, borrow, regulate, pro-abortion, anti-traditional family, left-wing agenda is going to turn off a lot of people in the middle. And then I think the second answer to your question is a compelling agenda of our own that we need to develop, and that's what we're going to be laying the groundwork for at the Road to Majority Conference.
Ralph, you guys in an election year, of course, are on the ground. You're knocking on doors. You are really boots on the ground. In this last election in 2020, what was the evangelical turnout like? Was it as high as it was in 2016? And what did you see from evangelicals?
It's a great question, and the answer is it was the largest turnout in modern American political history. According to exit polls, there were approximately 45 million self-identified born-again evangelicals who went to the polls. That's roughly 9 million more who went in 2016. Their share of the electorate went from 26% in 2016 to 28% in 2020, and it was even higher in the battleground states. So we did our job, and President Trump and the candidates did their job, and we turned out the biggest vote we'd ever seen. If we can do that again in 2022, I think Nancy Pelosi is going to be enjoying her last months as Speaker soon.
All right, Ralph Reed with Faith and Freedom Coalition, thank you so much, and best of luck with your event this week.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, the United States Army is celebrating its 246th birthday with the grand reopening of the Army's National Museum.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, tonight Americans are celebrating the 246th birthday of the United States Army.
Today's gift, the reopening of a new national museum. After its big debut on Veterans Day in November of 2020, the Army Museum was forced to close because of the pandemic. Now, the National Museum of the U.S. Army stands as a testament to U.S. soldiers everywhere. Here's CBN's Gabe LaMonica with the story.
The big reveal of the U.S. Army emblem on the lobby floor comes years after installing the final steel beam, and some 200 years after the 13th U.S. Congress authorized a national museum for the Army.
We are the last service to have its own national museum.
It took a lot of heavy lifting to move in everything from this Cobra King battle tank, the first in Bastogne 38-ton legend that broke the German lines during World War II's Battle of the Bulge, to this M3 Bradley fighting vehicle that led the charge in the 2003 invasion of Baghdad. All before suspending this Vietnam-era UH-1 Huey from the ceiling and bringing in hundreds of artifacts in between. Now, the oldest branch of the U.S. military is rolling along and into a 185,000 square foot glass and steel citadel above 84 acres some 20 miles south of the nation's capital.
It represents a beacon, again, the strength of the Army, the safety of the Army, and that's how we protect our citizens as well.
Tammy Call is the museum director.
We tell the Army's story, the comprehensive story, through the eyes and voices of our individual soldiers.
One of those voices belonging to the late Melvin Nestaby, who survived the Bataan Death March during World War II.
I will always be a soldier.
Hundreds of American soldiers died when the Japanese Army beat and tortured prisoners of war during a forced march of more than 60 miles.
A well of water
springing up into everlasting life.
Nestaby's New Testament Pocket Bible is just one of over 7.4 million copies issued to American GIs during World War II.
Lack of water or starving, this helped them through that time.
And this good book carried Nestaby past the perils of murder and disease over the course of 4 POW camps in 3.5 years.
He carried that with him throughout the duration of the war.
Paul Mirando is the chief of exhibits.
He gave his life, his service to the United States Army, and his story, along with this Bible, needs to be told.
The Army says that after over 240 years, this testament to its service and its soldiers is long overdue. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Thank you, Gabe. And still ahead, a day of patriotism and birthdays in the U.S., what Americans across the country are celebrating.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, red, white, and blue. Not only is it the Army's birthday, it's also former President Donald Trump's, and it is Flag Day.
A lot of celebration the day the U.S. adopted our official stars and stripes on a flag knitted by Betsy Ross. Today, the grand old flag can be found everywhere, from hanging off of houses to flying in the streets, showing that the significance behind our national symbol of freedom is not lost on Americans today. And Betsy Ross went on to sew flags for 50 more years.
All right, well, have a great evening, everybody.
We'll see you back here tomorrow.